What's up guys, my name is Timbo and welcome back to some more Destiny. In my last video on the ending of Shadowkeep's story, I mentioned how I would continue the discussion once the raid comes out, and as far as I'm concerned, that time has come. If you missed that video and want to know what happened in that final campaign cutscene, there will be a button showing up in the top right corner of your screen. That video has a lot of background info carrying over, so I'm gonna recommend you watch it before this one. Or not. This is a free country, you can do whatever you want. Immediately, I know what you guys are thinking. Does this mean No Thumbs Timbo has beaten the raid in the first week? First of all, I play on PC now, so I barely even have to use my thumbs anymore. And secondly, of course I didn't beat it yet. I'm like 920. If it took Dado like 12 hours, how do you think I'm gonna do? However, I have seen the raid. I have done my research. And so from here on out, I'm going to present to you some of the lore surrounding this raid, explaining the ending, and most importantly, get into what it all means for the future of Destiny. If you end up liking this video, leaving a positive rating is greatly appreciated, and if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future uploads. But without further ado, let's hop into the Garden of Salvation. Before we get into the deeper meaning of everything, I want to explain how the campaign and raid are linked. After an entity, let's just assume the darkness at this point, takes control over Ghost, we are led to an unknown spherical artifact. Did I mention it's spherical? Spherical! Touching the artifact subjects us to a vision within the Black Garden, which is where we see the doppelganger. After taking the spherical artifact back to Eris Morn, it begins to emit a signal to the Black Garden. The Vanguard took notice of this and sent a fire team of Guardians into the Black Garden via a newly discovered portal on the moon. This action caused the Vex to begin an invasion of their own as masses of them begin attacking the moon. These events are what explain both the raid and the Vex invasion events that have been happening randomly on the moon. And yes, I know what you're thinking, every sentence I say in this video from here on out will end with the moon. I don't think this is necessarily as exciting as many people hoped given the way Shadowkeep's campaign ended, but that's pretty much how the story and raid are linked this time around. Not as cool as Last Wish, and definitely not as cool as The Taken King, at least in my opinion. I'm now going to talk a little bit about the final boss as well as the flavor text on some of the new raid weapons and gear. After that we can discuss the ending and all that tinfoil hat theory stuff. The final boss of the Garden of Salvation raid is not what anyone was expecting. It is the Sanctified Mind, Soul Inherent, aka, who the frick is that? The Sanctified Mind is the Axis Mind of the Soul Divisive. In layman's terms, an Axis Mind is basically a leader of Vex, a unit that controls and oversees millions of other Vex units. And the Soul Divisive are the collective of Vex located within the Black Garden with the grass growing all over them. They're the type of Vex that are protectors and worshippers of the Black Heart, that is before we blew it up. The Sanctified Mind's solemn duty is to be given sacrifices by the Vex, even including the Vex sacrificing themselves in the process. When the Guardians entered the Black Garden to find the source of the artifact, the Sanctified Mind sent its legions of Vex to either destroy or test the Guardians to see if they were worthy of finding the source of the signal. That was one mouthful, terrible run-on sentence, but this is an English class, so we're just gonna go with it. The Mind would be deactivated by the Guardians and they would soon find the signal, which was deriving from a veiled statue similar to the one found inside the pyramid on the moon. Also, the Sanctified Mind becomes a statue when it dies, which hints at a link between it and the Soul Progeny, or the final bosses of Destiny 1's vanilla campaign, who were also statues and were brought to life by the Black Heart. Destiny always likes to add some lore onto their weapons and gear, and the Garden of Salvation is no different. While they're all relatively short, they reveal a short story about a fire team of Guardians who seem to side with the darkness. I'm gonna leave a link in the description to a Reddit post that has all of them written down because in video form it would just be really difficult to get that same visual message across. The Reddit post did a great job of putting them in order and displaying the names of the gear pieces along with which Guardians are talking, so I highly suggest you check it out. While this might be surprising to some, this is definitely not the first instance where we've seen Guardians moving away from the light. A Guardian named Pujari, who I've talked about in previous videos, has had a similar experience in the Black Garden. Other Guardians such as Dredge and Yor, Toland, and Osiris have run into problems with the Vanguard when it came to studying the darkness and its minions a little too much. What this says about the light and the Vanguard, that is up for you to decide. The Drifter has also been a big player in this, especially more recently, foreshadowing a second collapse and urging us to pick sides away from the Vanguard. If you look back at some of his quotes during Gambit, they carry a much bigger meaning now. Not only has he technically been preparing us for the raid, as the final encounter involves collecting motes, but lines like, "Gambit is your chance at salvation, take it," carry a lot more weight now. Emphasis on the word salvation, if you're slow like me. For lore on Pujari specifically, I'm going to reference you to another video made by me last year. It's a really interesting story and is one of those that really makes you think if the light is all good and if the darkness is all bad. And as always, there will be a card showing up in the top right corner of your screen to click or press with your little finger because you're on your little mobile devices. There's honestly enough evidence on Guardians either turning to the darkness or at least thinking about it or going pretty much insane. So if there's an interest in a video dedicated to that, let me know down in the comments and I can make it for you guys. With all that stuff taken care of now, we can get into the ending of the raid and what it all means for the Destiny franchise as a whole. As I slightly mentioned earlier in the video, when you defeat the Sanctified Mind, he doesn't crumble into weird particle effects, he doesn't majestically float backwards into the depths of outer space like Oryx did, he becomes a statue. Right as this happens, a shadow appears above a triangular hole in the ground, jumping down into the large hole, one of the Guardian's specialties, might I add, leads you down a pathway. At the end of the forested path is another statue, the same one that we saw at the end of the Shadowkeep campaign inside the pyramid. And while it's never said outright, it's pretty obvious that this is where the signal was originating from. After that, we get some additional lines from Eris, but what is perhaps more interesting than that is the lore book that opens. More parts of this book will no doubt be open as time goes on, and I'll be sure to follow up on it at some point. But as of right now, all we have is a title and one entry, and I can say that without a doubt, this is coming from the darkness. Perhaps the most interesting thing about this lore book is the title. Some may see the word unveiling and think nothing of it, however it is a huge bombshell of evidence. In my other videos on this topic, I've always made it a clear point that whatever this darkness entity is, they're probably not going to be called the darkness flat out. And I have this belief simply because those that wield the light are called guardians. Going on with that same theme, those that wield the darkness are probably referred to as something other than just the darkness. There was a leak that came out a long time ago and it mentioned how there was a new enemy race coming to Destiny, potentially for a Destiny 3, and they would be a darkness race called the Veil. I know I'm linking so many things in this video, but my whole breakdown of that Destiny 3 leak will be in the cards right now as well. Why is this a big deal? There has been evidence for a while now pointing us towards a huge confrontation with the darkness. From the lore, to the leaks, and now with Shadowkeep, we have plenty of actual evidence happening in-game. The doppelganger, the pyramid ships, the idea of salvation, it all lines up dating back to Destiny 2 vanilla when the Traveler's ancient enemy was first mentioned. I'm willing to argue these connections to the darkness and picking sides started all the way back with Callus and the Leviathan raid. And with the lore book titled Unveiling, the credibility of that leak naming the darkness race the Veil carries a lot more weight. I mean, the statues we see are veiled and everything. It just makes too much sense at this point. What is said in the first entry is also really interesting. In my last video, I touched on how the darkness see themselves as our salvation, that the light is insufficient to protect and be the source of the world's power. They don't seem to even be evil in a sense, they just see themselves as superior, and they believe everyone must join their side to survive, almost like a purification or survival of the fittest of sorts. I think as time goes on, this internal warfare is only going to become stronger. So far we've already been given examples of Guardians who've switched sides, characters who have chosen to blur the lines, and others that prefer not to take a side at all. I'm assuming it has absolutely no relevance, but it kind of makes me think back to the Stranger and that one line she said. I don't have it written down, but it was something along the lines of, "A side must always be chosen, even if it's the wrong side." I'm curious to hear what you guys think. If Bungie is going to stick to the origins of Destiny, where light is good and dark is bad, and the lines separating them are clearly drawn, or is Destiny moving in a direction where it's not as simple as that, where there's genuine conflict over which side is right and superior? Will they give the players the ability to make those choices for themselves? Doing so would lead to new subclasses and multiple storylines, but it also could complicate things really fast. The raid didn't really do much to push the narrative further, in my opinion. I feel like the Vex we battled in the Black Garden are just there worshipping the darkness, where the bigger plot arc is the darkness trying to get us to join their side. It really just reinforced things we already knew, and I feel like this is where the game is going to stay for a while now. At least until the next big content DLC expansion release, or Destiny 3, whichever one comes first. In the meantime, I'll be sure to keep you guys up to date on any and everything that happens right here on this channel. That's going to do it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed the video, leaving a like is super appreciated. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.